Okay, so welcome everyone to the Citizen Advisory Committee for the City of Everett. I am Kimber Landry. I'm the Community Development Manager for the Community Development Division. I am going to just put out a couple of guidelines and procedures. Staff is opening the discussion, then we're going to be passing the agenda to the chair to lead. Members of the public that are listening to us tonight or watching us tonight may email comments to Vicki Doorway, our Community Development Specialist, at vdorway@everettwa.gov, and those are accepted within the first 30 minutes of the meeting. And I also, real quick, want to, I missed a step. Let me go ahead and share our agenda so that we have that up and available.
Can you make it a little larger, Kimbra?
Yeah. So Citizen Advisory Committee meeting, November 16th. Again, this is the public hearing and virtual meeting for the Cdbg, AHTF, and Home 2022 funding allocations. The public call-in number is 425-616-3920 with a conference ID that needs to be entered. And that conference ID is 724-887-726, and then the #. A 30-day comment period is going to follow this hearing if we are able to take action, and I believe that we are. And so the 30-day public comment period will begin on November 22nd and last until December 23rd. And written comments, again, can be emailed to vdoorway@everettwa.gov. And I would encourage anybody that is interested to also visit our website and the Community Development Division's grant pages to learn more about our funding opportunities. And with that, I will give it over to our chair.
Hi, everybody. And Kimbra, do you want to scroll down a little more on the agenda, please? Thanks. Excellent.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kimbra. So for our meeting tonight, I'm going to do roll call, and then I will go over a few of the procedures that we're going to be doing. And if there's any questions, please always feel free to ask. So with that, I'm going to call roll. Greg Campbell.
Here.
Demba Balde. Samantha Hassan. Larissa Knopp.
Here.
I'm here. Susan Mosshart is here. Sue Johnson.
Here.
Kathy Lynott.
Here.
And Ben Breeden.
Present.
Thank you. I will ask the staff to identify themselves, please.
So I'm Vicki Doorway, Community Development Specialist.
And I am Kimber Landry, Community Development Manager.
Thank you. Tonight or this afternoon, I will call on each committee member during our discussion and our voting. And if the committee would please hold all questions until after the full presentation, that would be appreciated. If we have questions, we're going to ask the staff to answer the questions first before we ask the representatives of the different agencies to respond, because the staff may know the answer to that question and we can just implement it that way. So now I'm going to turn it over to Vicki, please, for the staff presentation.
Okay. So as I mentioned, I'm Vicki Doorway, Community Development Specialist. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee members, for being here. So I'm going to give kind of an overview of our 2022 program year for our 3 funding sources: Community Development Block Grant, Affordable Housing Trust Funds, and then our Home Funds. And then I'll be reviewing some of the staff recommendations for each funding source. And as Susan mentioned, we'll wait until after I've presented all the funding sources and all our recommendations before we start committee discussion. So if you have notes, I would suggest if you have a pen and paper, you can jot down your questions and then we can address those at that time. So I am going to work on screen sharing, and is everyone able to view the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll, Kembra, maybe if I need to scroll up or scroll down or anything, you can just let me know that. So this is the breakout, and you can see that the city is expecting to receive about $850,000 of community development block grant funds, also known as Cdbg, and it can be used for various things like public service activities, non-public service activities, program administration, public facility improvements, infrastructure improvements, and so on. For the public service activities, there is a cap of 15%. So 15% of that 850,000 is about 127,000. And then the non-public service activities are 65%, so a little over $552,000. And then administrative costs come to about $170,000. For the home funding source, Everett is part of the home consortium with the Snohomish County and the city of Marysville, and that can be used for new affordable housing activities or rehabilitation activities. And so we're expecting to receive $350,000 in home funds.
Vicki, real quick,
Yes.
Can we just focus in a little bit more on the
Zoom in.
numbers? Yes, if we can
Yes.
zoom in a little bit for our TV audience, and
There we
will just
go.
read the verbs otherwise. So
Okay.
thank you.
Hopefully everyone can see that. Okay. So then the last funding source is the Affordable Housing Trust Funds, and we typically have used these funds to support shelter operations for shelters in Everett, including domestic violence services, Cocoon House, and the Interfaith Family Shelter. The funds can also be used for acquisition and rehabilitation of affordable housing. And basically, the funds are passed through to the city by the county and are generated from document recording fees. And so we'll get about $135,000 of that funding. So it's always difficult when we have to make these decisions, especially we're going to start with the public services. I'll get to that in just a moment. But our requests totaled over $476,000 for the public service activities. And as you see, we have about 127,000. So that means about $350,000 we are not able to fund. We did have a lot of strong applications, and it's always difficult to stretch these funds as far as we want to. But administration really has a strong focus on housing and homelessness priorities. So basic services tended to receive a more critical eye. And I'm assuming it is jumped to the next screen. All right. So, and I'll kind of go through the funding recommendations, but just as a kind of a side note, some applicants who are not receiving recommendations for funding through Cdbg are being referred to other funding sources like Human Needs or the American Rescue Plan Act funds, and some other funding sources. So with starting up at the top with housing, Arp is an organization that's been funded in the past, and they serve persons with disabilities, and their program is for housing financial assistance, which will help those it'll provide emergency financial assistance and then also systems navigation. And so staff is recommending an award of $17,000. Their ask was $35,000. For Hand in Hand, they were very effective at allocating some of the Cdbg COVID relief rental assistance. And they've also been allocated additional COVID relief rent assistance that will go through June of 2022. And so this request, or the program year for 2022, doesn't start until July of 2022. So they're requesting additional rent assist funding that would begin at that time. And staff is recommending $35,000 out of their $70,000 ask. For Snohomish County Legal Services, this is another program that has been funded in the past. This is their Housing Justice Project. They provide free legal services to aid in evictions and housing mediation to prevent homelessness. And they also help the city adhere to the fair housing compliance. And so staff is recommending $15,000 for that program. As I mentioned, unfortunately, basic services did not receive as much of a focus, but we do have a couple of programs that we are recommending funding for. One is Housing Hope, and obviously Housing Hope as an agency has received funding for different programs, but this is a new program that's focusing specifically on mental health and therapeutic services at their Tomorrow's Hope childcare. So they're going to focus on children who are experiencing social emotional delays caused by childhood trauma due to homelessness and poverty. So the funding supports a child and family specialist and a mental health therapist, and it's serving children who are most likely unable to be served by mainstream childcare. So it's kind of a unique program there, and staff is recommending $15,000 for that program. So the other basic service that staff has recommended funding for is Homage meal delivery services. This is also known as. Pardon?
There. Thanks.
Okay. Okay.
The green was just. Go
Okay.
ahead. Sorry.
All right. So so Homage Meal Delivery Services, also called Meals on Wheels, they support homebound seniors and disabled adults. And it's another program that has received funding for a number of years and helps provide food security for seniors and those with disabilities. So staff is recommending $15,000 for that program. Getting down to the homelessness priority, Cocoon House has another new program. It's for their transitions shelter, and it is focusing on mental health. So it addresses, there's an increased level of mental health needs in the youth that are seeking services at transitions, and that the need for mental health significantly increased with COVID. And the funds are for a behavioral health coordinator to provide connections to mental health resources, and specifically to support behavioral health crises after hours. So in the off hours when there's not staff around, they're finding a need there. So staff is recommending $30,000, $30,500 for the behavioral health coordinator with Cocoon House. So again, the amount requested was $476,000, and the funds available are $127,000. So that is the public services recommendations. And now we're going to move on to the non-public services. So there's two categories, housing and public facility. And the CHIP program, Community Housing Improvement Program, is a program that's been provided by the city since 1977. Everett obviously continues to have an aging housing stock, and this program is designed to keep low-income homeowners in their home and maintain secure and stable housing. Staff did prioritize the other two programs first with their funding recommendations, and I'll talk about those in just a moment. So CHIP is kind of receiving the residual amount of that. And that primarily supports the CHIP staffing and administration costs. So that recommendation is $209,243. So the Homage Minor Home Repair Program, that is another housing program basically to improve housing for seniors and those with disabilities. And we are basically recommending a full, basically completing their full ask of $175,000. They've been a consistent organization to work with, and they again are helping to keep people in their homes who are lower income, and especially those who are seniors and with disabilities. Our other program that was a little bit unique is the Child Strive is looking to do a roof replacement at the Village on Casino Road. So they have 2 out of the 4 buildings need their roof replaced, and they had some pictures of some of the tarps that are covering some of the areas that are definitely in need of repair. And so that has been recommended for full funding at $168,257. So between that, we have the basically the $552,000 that's recommended for funding for the CDBG non-public service activities. Okay, so just a few more to go through. So this is for the home funds, and we did not have any direct applications for home funds this program year. And after reviewing applications, staff did not find another project that was a good fit for these dollars. But the city is still slated to receive home allocation through the interlocal agreement with Snohomish County. So we're proposing that we maintain assistance for tenant-based rental assistance at $200,000, and then an award of $150,000 for CHIP. And CHIP did not receive home funds, I think, the last couple of years. So we are recommending that they receive some of that funding this year. And the last funding source, the AHTF program, we received 3 applications and are recommending funding as follows. So Interfaith Family Shelter, they shelter unhoused families, and they've received funding for a number of years. The funding would support shelter staff and administrative staff who oversee the shelter operations. So their ask is $68,000, and staff is recommending an award of $63,000. Domestic violence services for their emergency shelter operations. This is for those who are fleeing domestic violence. Another organization that has received funds for a number of years, and this would support administrative staff who oversee shelter operations. And their ask was $45,000, and staff is recommending a $40,000 award. The last one is the Cocoon House Transitions Program. So this is funding that's also going to help with 24-hour staffing. It's not the same as the mental health one that we were talking about earlier. Another agency that's received funding for a number of years, and staff is recommending $32,000 for them. So that totals the $135,000 that we have available for those funds. So unless Kembra, do you want to add anything to this as far as anything else you would like to add?
I will echo the earlier sentiment that this is probably the most difficult component of our jobs, is to receive these fantastic applications and to have such a finite funding source for it. There is a concentrated effort though with staff right now, so that we are recognizing that we have other funding that's available through city resources right now, and that's whether that's the human needs funds that we just closed or the ARP funds that City Council is getting briefed on tomorrow. We have future opportunities where we can continue to connect community partners with funding sources that allow for their programs to move forward right now. And so there is some work that we've been doing in the background with agencies to help connect them with that. And we will continue to do that. And so I know that this is something that is not only hard for staff, but it's hard for the committee, for you all to see these considerations and to see the great work in the community and to not have the resources to fund everybody. But we are also focusing on trying to provide larger grants, and we're in that trend where we're providing substantial grants that allow for real good investment in the community by the agency. And that unfortunately does mean that we are giving bigger awards, but a smaller number of them. So I also kind of want the committee to just be mindful of that we are looking at creating more substantial awards when we do give out grant allocations, and we're also trying to allow for a little bit more collaboration with working with agencies on a good funding source. So you know, I just appreciate everyone for submitting and conveying interest in our funding opportunities, and I hope that we can continue to work with all the community partners that may or may not be funded tonight. So with that, Vicki, I also want to point out that we have had 2 additional committee members join us. So if we can just confirm their attendance and call out the roll again real quick for the record, then I will have us move forward. But just notice that they joined us. So.
Okay, so I'm happy to call roll once again. Greg Campbell.
Here.
Demba Balde.
Right here.
Samantha Hassan.
I'm here.
Larissa Knopp.
Here.
I'm still here. Sue Johnson.
Here.
Kathy Lynott.
Yes, I'm here.
Ben Breeden.
Here.
Fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to go back and I'm going to ask if there are any questions, a discussion by each of the separate funding pools. Can we get the graphic up again, please?
Yes, just a moment.
No problem. So are there any questions or discussion about the staff recommendations for the housing funding pool? I should probably call roll again. Craig,
Here?
do you have any questions about the housing funding pool?
No, I don't.
Okay, Demba,
No questions at this time.
thank you. Samantha,
No questions.
Larissa,
I don't have any questions.
thank you. Sue,
No questions.
Real quick, Chair, I just want to interject and just bring up the point that at this time, this is also when, if there are any questions that we need to give to staff or the agency, I would encourage those to get brought forth at this time. And it looks as though we've had a share of a screen real quick. Demba, I'm going to ask that you stop sharing real quick your screen.
I must have done it accidentally.
And that's understandable. Let's see if we can't get a hold of control again. So
Let me see. Oh, did I leave?
No, we still have you.
Okay. I can't see myself. I mean, can you guys see me?
We can. Vicky, can you see if you can help control the screen sharing real quick since you're the meeting administrator?
There.
Wonderful. Okay, we're
Okay,
back
I
to
won't
normal.
touch- I won't
Okay.
touch anything now.
Okay.
So again, just want to reiterate that real quick. So if we have any committee members that are wanting to discuss anything with agencies, please bring those questions up at this time. And then any agencies that are wanting to provide comment, we will open up the opportunity for agencies to just provide discussion or comment on funding recommendations during the public hearing portion. So right now we're going to focus on committee members. Are there any questions from staff or to the agencies on any of the funding recommendations that are proposed? So Chair, I'm going to give it back to you now and see if, and going through the roll, but I just want everybody to be very clear about what it is that we're looking at here.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, do you have any questions or comments?
No, not just yet.
Ben, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not.
Okay. So the basic services, can I ask a general, does anybody have any questions about basic services, or would you prefer I go through the list every time?
You can, I think that if we don't have any specific comments on any of the listed activities, it would be fine to do the general priorities. And if anybody does have a comment that all of a sudden they've remembered, if you can just make sure to either raise your hand on the Teams icon or raise your hand next to your face, when we'll monitor visuals and try and call out persons that may have additional comments. But Chair, I would go ahead and go by priority.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments about the homelessness funding pool?
Well, wait, we didn't, did we?
I asked
Finish
about
basic
basic services. Yeah. You're brewing, Sue, I see that. Would you like to?
I don't have a specific question, but I'm not sure that the whole group was finished with that one yet. So
Basic
it's
services?
possible someone have a question. Yeah.
Okay.
Since that's the one where we act so many of them, it just seems likely there might be a comment or a question.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns about the basic services funding pool?
I just want to make sure, can you hear me? This is Shane from the Arp.
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear, okay, great. Because I'm not really familiar with Microsoft Zoom, and so I wasn't sure that it shows that there's 20 people and I only see a couple people down below, so I wasn't sure how that worked. But I think that I'm set. I just wanted to make sure that I was here and I could mute myself when I wanted to, and so thank you.
Great.
Okay.
And we are asking that agencies turn off their cameras, and then if there's questions or whatnot, so we just have kind of the committee on the screen, and then if there's questions, specific questions of the committee for the agencies, or the agencies can comment when the public hearing opens.
Chair, we do have a hand raised.
I see that, but I can't tell who it is. I just have a +15.
So it looks
Samantha.
like yeah.
Oh, hi, Samantha.
Hey. So my question is, I'm looking at basic services and looking at the ask and then the reduced ask and then our recommendation. Maybe we'll talk about this later on, but that's a significant decrease. You know, a 202,000 versus 30,000. How did we get so low on that? Are we going to dig into that?
We did dig into that, and perhaps you missed that. So if Vicky wants to bring you
I'm
up to
so
speed-
sorry. I may have missed it because I'm so sorry. Was working.
That's okay. It's
Not
okay.
a problem. So just in a nutshell, administration is really focusing on housing and homelessness as priorities. So the basic services received a more critical eye as far as funding. And so the requests, overall requests from the 3 categories was like $476,000. We only have $127,000 to distribute. So it's a tough call, but we're kind of following administration's guidance of the focus.
Thank you for that.
You bet.
So using that, Johnson, using that rationale, now I'm a fan of Homage and meal delivery service, but how do they meet the criteria where some of the others don't?
Kimbra?
I can step in for this one. Yeah. So very good point. This is something where, you know, we have a little bit of room for discussion, I think. First of all, the staff recommendations are recommendations. So I want everybody on the committee to just understand that. These are recommendations for starting points for discussions. With that, in the light of COVID, we're still dealing with food insecurity. We're still dealing with, you know, now what's going to be a growing mental health crisis that we need to be mindful of. It's just a balance of us trying to do, okay, so we have a mental health priority that we were able to meet, and then we have this unique program that does food security. And, you know, when it comes to provision of basic services, food security, mental health, and employment job training, food rose to the top for priority for staffing recommendations. So if that is something that the committee would like to revisit, happy to do so with your discussion right now. But that was the standpoint that staff had, is just that it rises a little bit higher when it comes to priority need than employment.
Well, and it seems to me in the past when we discussed it that if seniors are not able, you know, seniors who need the service are not provided it, they are more in danger of homelessness. So I can see where that links it to the homelessness. And so I wasn't necessarily suggesting that we take it away. I was just trying to get your rationale as to how that one made the cut. And so I'm still in favor of them receiving it personally, but I just wanted to hear your rationalization.
Yeah, and it really has to come back to just the impacts that we know are still out there for COVID. And that being said, that's not necessarily to say that employment and job training and job retention are not also impacts from COVID, but food security again was considered a little bit higher than priority need.
Any other questions, concerns, or discussion on the basic services section? Okay. There'll be opportunity if we need to come back, I'm sure. Are there any concerns, questions on the homelessness funding pool? Greg, are you chewing on something?
Yeah. We've got mental health services listed both under services and homelessness. My question is, why are they appearing under both of those priorities? Why aren't they in one?
The Cocoon House?
Well, there's services. Well, I wasn't looking at this one, but yeah, the Cocoon House has mental health, but in the category for priorities under homelessness, mental health is listed. And under services in the priorities, mental health is listed as well. So it's listed in both of those priorities. I guess I'm just looking at this because it looks like they've been mostly ignored.
So I can address the priority and why we have 2 mental health priorities. This goes back to some of the stuff that we establish when we do our priority needs hearings in late summer, early fall. Mental, and to go back way back, so if we all remember when we did the consolidated plan, mental health basic services definitely were service needs or priority needs that we all recognized were things that we wanted to focus on for the next 5 years for the federal funding pools. Furthermore, though, we also recognize that homelessness mental health, or the mental health provisions for those that are currently homeless, is a unique need that may be different than just mental health provisions for basic service for community needs. So you may have people that are not homeless, but they still have a high mental health need or service need. And so at the time of when we established, when the committee and the city established priorities, we felt that it was important to break those two out so that we have mental health services that are prioritizing homeless persons and people that are currently homeless. And then we have mental health services that are provided for community-wide provision for low-income individuals. So these people can be homeless, they cannot be homeless, they may be at risk of homelessness, you know, they may be children from low-income households. That is a separate mental health need or service need than the mental health services that are only for homeless persons. So I don't know if that helps to clarify some of the discussions that we've had in the past for why that's broken out. But at the time of establishing priority need, the city and the community or committee decided that those were two distinct priorities.
Okay.
Greg, was your question related to basic services or the homelessness part?
Well, for instance, Housing Hope is about homelessness, and there's a category for mental health there, and there was no funding.
Okay.
Cocoon House, Way Out program, housing, mental health was ignored there. But under the homelessness category, it was not. It just looks like somehow.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually a deeper dive into the applications themselves. So Vicki, I would actually invite you to help us understand some of the nuances between the applications at this point.
Okay. So with Cocoon House, with their Way Out program, some of it is mental health, but some of it is when we used to have the crime prevention priority, it was to help prevent recidivism. So it's not as much of a focus, I would say, on mental health. And they had the new program that is very focused on mental health for homeless youth, and helping with crisis that seem to be happening, especially in the off hours. So we did recommend the $30,500 for the new program for the behavioral health coordinator with the transitions program. For Housing Hope, part of it has to do with the overall intent of, so the mental health course is a component of their adult life skills classes. And they also had kind of a newer program focusing on mental health and therapeutic services at Tomorrow's Hope Daycare. So that's where we put some of the funding towards that program. Cdbg funding is often geared more towards either new programs or significantly increasing services at an existing program. So that also is part of the focus, is that the mental health and therapeutic services through Tomorrow's Hope, that is kind of increasing some of the services that they're providing for those children at the center. And was there anything else you wanted?
No, I didn't mean to put you in the hot seat. I really didn't. I just.
No, I mean, it's good to know, some of the reasoning. And again, these are tough decisions for us, tough decisions for you. It is not easy to do this, but again,
I'm aware of that. It just, I understand the extraordinary needs we have nowadays for housing and homelessness that has never occurred in Everett. And so we're doing some very odd things right now to try to get people off the streets and, and safe. And you just, all of us just have to go with this and think, well, you know, we've got a real big problem on our hands, a real big problem. So people like me should quit looking at details like that, and just let it go.
No, I think you should. I mean, it's good.
This is good. No, well,
we're all
mental
learning.
health services is important, you know, but it's not as important as someone sleeping on the sidewalk in this kind of weather. So I get it.
Thank you, Greg.
It appears that Sue, do you have, Sue, you're muted. Do you have comments on basic services?
My categories too.
I was just going to say, in line with them explaining why the Homage program was recommended for funding, getting the clarification that you just gave to Greg and to all of us helps us understand why, you know, we would slot one program, you know, two programs out of several. And so it actually is helpful to have that further breakdown because, you know, we don't know which one to slot it in. You know, they, like you said, they all sound good. So having your further clarification actually was a help. That's all I would say.
Ben?
This is maybe not related to this exact discussion, but Greg, what you were talking about, I would highly recommend taking a few moments to go fill out the city survey for allocating ARPA funds, because what you were just talking about, there's a long list of things that, and it's a multifaceted problem, and it needs a multifaceted response. So just, I would recommend voicing some of that and looking at the options and ways to fund that. Just as a sidebar to this conversation, that's, I think, part of that as well. So,
okay, sure.
Good point. Are we ready to move on to homelessness funding pool? Any questions, concerns, or discussion items for the homelessness funding pool?
Maybe Vicki, just remind us why the Vision Church Vision Hope Center one wasn't considered.
That was one that we, well, twofold. One, we are recommending for potential other source of funding. The other is that their overall ask was $80,000 out of $127,000. So it was a very high ask for the Cdbg funds. So we're steering them towards other funding sources that might have more capacity than the Cdbg funds.
Gotcha.
Hey, Ben, do that again. We'll do a screen save. Did you flip that up? Did you flip up that address just then?
I just sent I added in the chat section a link to the ARPA Fund Allocation Survey that not just you, but really everybody on this call probably should take 2 minutes and go do.
Okay, it went up on the screen just temporarily and then it went away. So, okay, it's in the chat.
Click on the link, open it in a new tab, and then you can have it ready after the meeting to do.
Okay, thanks.
Ben, thank you so much for helping to carry this message forward. This would have been in my staff reports at the end, but thank you for taking the initiative to do that at the beginning. Thank you, thank you. Okay, it looks as though Demba has
a question.
Yeah, I have a question or maybe a comment. The staff recommendation seems to, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, seems to go against, you know, some of the practices that we've been doing for the last several years. Because I mean, these are hard times for everybody. Right, so it appears that we're denying funding for some of these groups and then giving a larger funding to some other groups. Yeah. So in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean we've tried to allocate at least some funding, some form of funding to some of these groups so that they don't go without. Right. I mean, that's just what I remember. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's why I asked. Well, they did mention that some of the funding. Well, actually, most of the funding is going to be focused more on larger amounts to a smaller number of groups. as opposed to smaller amounts to a larger number of groups. And that's probably what you're witnessing.
Yeah, and we've had that trend for about 2 years now. I think it's been about, several funding cycles where we've shifted to providing bigger grants to fewer groups so that they can utilize one agency can really utilize it, because if you get a much smaller amount, you can't do the full impact of what you intended to do. If you really need 80,000 and we give you 5, it doesn't have much of an impact. But if someone else needed 30 and we give you 30, then they can do what their mission really is. And so I know when I used to chair the meetings, we tended to be more equal, just dispersing X percent to everybody. But it's been a couple of years now where we've tried to shift in that direction. And, it's sort of hard to because you have to deny some in order to do that. But then the money can be leveraged better. And I know the city of Seattle did a study, and they talked about that they threw a lot of money at homelessness, but you have to do it strategically or all that money doesn't do the intended good. And so that's why giving bigger chunks to fewer people sometimes is actually more effective, even though psychologically it's hard to say no.
I also want to back that up by saying that if it's possible, some of these organizations will be recommended for other funding pools, like the needs, the human needs monies. So it's not that they're not being considered, just not for this particular funding pool. Greg?
Yes, for instance, Housing Hope was asked on their application, what's the minimum amount of money that they would accept, and it was $10,000. And I haven't looked at the other applicants under the basic services, but that's probably not doable, so they weren't given anything, because they have stated that if they got less than $10,000, that was the minimum that they would accept. So
I will clarify that because some said they would take any amount, but we're kind of putting a floor of $10,000 as the minimum. Again, trying to create some larger awards. So
they didn't say this, you said that?
For two of the organizations, yeah, for 2 of them, they put any, and we told them the minimum is 10,000. So
okay, it's you then. All right,
but not just on 2.
Okay, just on 2 of them. Okay. I'll put my hand down, I guess.
Demba?
Yeah, just one more comment on this. I was just thinking about the doctrine of fairness, because we know these are very, very hard times. These are not normal times, right? I mean, if we done the same thing for the last 3 years, the last 2 years has been an extraordinary time. So if we have a smaller pool of funds and we have a larger demand, I think to me it makes sense to at least, try to spread it out, because otherwise some people would be left out completely. And, I know that, this is a small amount. 127 is definitely a very, very small amount. But I'm just thinking we're leaving somebody out there cold, and just not reaching out to them to a smaller pool that the whole public says. I'm just concerned about that. But I guess if the majority decide, I'm okay to live with that.
Thank you. So I'm just going to clarify that we don't have any more discussion, concern, or opinions about the homelessness funding pool at this time. If not, I suggest we move to the next funding pool.
Okay.
Real quick, I want us to just make sure that what we are also doing before we move forward is that we are recognizing the funding recommendations that are proposed. And so before we move forward,
okay,
if we can just confirm that the funding recommendations that are in column I need to be carried over to column J and or adjusted, that we're doing that before we get to the next funding pool. So just
okay. Did I miss that in my notes, or? No,
I think it's at the bottom of the first sheet, but but we're going to do it anyway, so that's okay.
Okay. Okay, so maybe I should call roll for that. So the proposal at this time is everybody okay with moving the staff recommendations into the green J funding column? Greg Campbell.
Yes.
Demba Balde.
Yes.
Samantha Hassan.
Yes.
Larissa Knopp.
Yes.
Sue Johnson.
Yes.
Kathy Lynott.
Yes.
Ben Breeden.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well.
Oops. All right. Well, I'll work on this later. Let me just see if I can do it quickly. Well,
Oh,
maybe I
good.
can. Kemba, I'm probably messing up your spreadsheet, but we'll fix it later.
Most important is that we just get the funding recommendations correct, and after that we can formatting. So
Okay. Okay. All right. So next, just confirm a different screen showed up.
Yes.
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 Okay. So this is for the Cdbg non-public service activities. So this is the staff recommendation is in column I.
Are there any questions, discussion, or concerns about the housing funding pool from staff recommendations? I'm taking the silence as a no. Or Sue, do you have something? You're
No,
flashing.
I'm good.
Okay, Greg?
Oh,
Well, no. This is how CDBG money goes. I mean, these guys get all this money. The people that are dying of starvation don't get very much. It's just so out of balance to me. But it's the money that we
That's a
get.
bigger issue.
I know, and we can't help it. You know, we don't do this. I know that.
yeah.
It's just a little out of
Yeah,
whack.
well, these are funds that are earmarked specifically so they can't be used in other categories.
I know,
So
that's what I just said. Yes.
Kathy?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm happy to see that the roof replacement is fully funded. I know how widely used that community center is, so that's really good to see. I just think that's great.
Yeah.
Here, Kitty.
Well, she has something to say, but I'm not going to let her.
Probably a good idea. So anybody else have any questions, discussion, or concerns about this funding pool?
Well, somebody mentioned you saw photographs of Child Strive's roof. I didn't see any photographs of.
Well, Vicki has access to those things.
I have access if you would like to see.
Well, it would have been nice in the application part. It would have been nice to see that.
Okay, that's a good point.
You know, because you won't believe what I did. I actually figured out what per square foot are they getting charged for that roof, and it's $33 a square foot.
Oh,
that's the
not
kind of
bad price.
stupid things I do. But, and I thought, my God, if I had my roof done, it would cost 3 times what I paid, and but don't mind me. It's just.
I'm going to go through the list again. So we are going to approve of the staff recommendation and move it from column I to column J. Greg Campbell.
Yes.
Demba Balde.
Yes.
Samantha Hassan.
Yes.
Larissa Knopp.
Yes.
Sue Johnson,
Yes.
Kathy Lynott,
Yes.
Ben Breeden,
Yes.
and I am a yes.
This is too
Okay.
easy for the staff. They did a good job, right?
And I too am very happy that Child Strive gets a new roof for the 2 of their buildings.
Yes.
I sure
makes
would have
me
liked to
feel
see
good.
tarps on that roof, though. I would have liked to see that.
Not this time of year.
Just drive by.
Yeah, especially with the rain last night
And the
yeah.
wind? Ah.
Oh,
Okay, so moving on to the home funds.
Is there any discussion or concern or comment on this funding pool?
This is Aisha. Hey, did you get my?
I'm guessing that there's no discussion. So, Greg, move the recommendation to column G.
yes.
Demba?
This Snohomish County tenant-based rental, now those are the same folks that come to us because they actually go to the courthouse and help folks that are just about to get evicted. Are these the same people? I think they are.
No, it's a different program. You might, I don't know if you're thinking, I think you're thinking of Snohomish County Legal Services, perhaps, or
Yeah, that's not
the
oh, this
Dispute
is
Resolution Center. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kemba, do you want to get into a little more detail on the TBRA funds?
When we, so this
They
is
were
something
funded
that
with-
we've done. Yeah, we've done TBRA funds before. This is executed through our interlocal agreement that we have with Snohomish County. And what they do is they use their agreement and their sources to work with. And I believe Vicki can help me out with this one, the YWCA. And then that organization helps to execute the rental assistance that we do for this. So this is basically us saying that, you know, that the agency that the Snohomish County Human Service Department has as an agreement for executing tenant-based rental assistance dollars, that we're allowing for these funds to go back into that.
Got it. Thanks.
Demba, are you okay moving the recommendation, staff recommendation?
I'm okay with that. Just quick clarification. What's the, it says contingency there, it says yes. Does that mean that they have to approve it?
Great question. So contingencies, what we've done in the past is we found that it, every time that we have to go out for public funds, we have to do public process. And when we have contingency projects identified, that helps for when a project, because we're so far in advance, we're 9 months before any of these projects really get going. We're making these decisions now. If anybody between this time of when we make the decision and when the agreement gets executed is unable to move forward in their award, then the projects that have identified as contingencies then get the residual amount that's unallocated now. And so if we go back to the previous sheets, you'll see that multiple agencies have been identified for contingency. And so anytime that we get uncommitted or awards that are not able to be actualized, anybody that's marked as contingency gets a breakdown of that uncommitted or unallocated amount.
And that means that we don't have to go back through committee.
Correct.
The city can allocate those without having to go through the whole process again.
Correct. It shaves about 2.5 to 3 months worth of public notice and public comment and hearings off of the process if we're able to identify those now.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's the federal program, and that's why we do it this way. So.
Okay, so back to, where was I? Gosh, I guess Samantha,
Yes.
Larissa, Sue,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
Okay. And moving on to the final funding source.
Are there any questions, comments, or discussion items for this funding pool? I will say that I like that we're giving a very close to the ask amount for each of these three. I feel good about that.
And it does seem like the reductions were fairly evenly given across the board as well.
Right. Yes, Greg. I heard
No,
your. Okay.
well, I'll just, no, never mind.
Breathing. If there are no discussion concerns or questions, I will now take roll again to ascertain if we are going to move it into category H. Greg,
Yes.
Demba,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Larissa,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well.
All right.
And now we move to the open public hearing section. I need a motion, yes, a motion and a second, please.
I move that we open the discussion to the public hearing.
I second that.
Yay. Greg, do you agree?
Yes. Yes.
Demba,
Yes.
Samantha,
Yes.
Larissa,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Public discussion is now open. Public hearing, I mean.
So we will ask if there are any written, Vicki, have we received any written comments?
Let me stop screen sharing so I can double check my email here.
And just procedural wise, we will read any written comments into the record, and then also we will open it up if any agencies that are attending the call tonight would like to also provide comment at that time. We will open that up as well, and then following, we will then close the hearing, and then you all will have formal action.
Okay, the only thing I have, there's one of the agencies that's having trouble getting into the meeting. Should I try and resend them the invitation?
Vicki, if you can pass along who that might, if you can forward me the email, I'll handle it. And then
Okay.
we can open up for agency comment if there are any.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So otherwise, there are no written comments?
Correct.
Okay, so Chair, if you'd like to open it up for agency comment?
If there's any agencies with us this evening that would like to have make a comment or be part of the public hearing, please let us know.
I would. My name is Nicole. I'm with Vision Church, Vision Hope Center.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi. I just wanted to say thank you for your time. I know as I was watching this hearing, you guys did not have an easy choice to make with the public services or with any of it. And, you know, I just really appreciate listening to all of the comments about homelessness and how we really do have a problem here in Everett and all of the comments. And I just wanted to sincerely thank you guys for your time. You're appreciated.
Thank you so much for that acknowledgement. Is there any other agency that would like to be part of the public hearing part?
This is Terry Clark with Child's Drive. I too want to thank you. I've watched you for many years go through this process and have always appreciated the staff work and the committee's work, and how hard it is and how closely you stick with your principles. And I just want to let you know that this is the roof, and thank you so much for the roofs. All 4 buildings need new roofs, but these 2 need them worse than the others. And so we'll keep working on this for probably a few more years. We're going to replace it with a standing seam steel roof instead of the tile, because the tile has lasted for 40 years, which is really more than we should have expected. But the standing seam steel roof will last for many decades to come. And as a couple of you have mentioned, there is so much good going on there and so much food being distributed. Just to let you know, thousands, tens of thousands of people are receiving food through the VOA Food Bank, the Madre's Fresh Food Pantry, and a warm meal program every week. So lots of food going out of that place. So thank you all again so much for your support and for all that you do.
Thank you, Terry. Any other agency?
This is Joe Alonzo from Cocoon House, and I want to echo what Terry and Paul have said, just thanking you for the thoughtful process that you all have taken. The committee, I've seen you go through this year in and year out as well, and just have an immense respect for the process. And want to specifically thank you for your recommendations around funding the homelessness transition project at Cocoon House. It is incredibly hard doing this work. It's harder now than ever, and really want to thank you for your consideration of that. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
Hi, this is Jim Dean from the Interfaith Family Shelter, and I again want to say thank you for, I've watched this work for the last 5 years, and you do it so much better every time. And so I just want to thank you for the hard work that you do and the difficult decisions that you are making. So wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other agencies? One more time. If not, we will close the public hearing at this time, and I need a motion, a second, and we'll take a vote.
I move that we close the public hearing at this time.
I second it.
Okay. With that, I will say, are there any
Nays.
Thank you. A little brain fart, sorry. Are there any nays? If not, then we will just close the public hearing portion. I don't hear any nays, so we will close the public hearing portion of this committee meeting. Now we have a committee discussion in response to our participant comments, which thank you for acknowledging the hard work, and thank you for the agencies for speaking up and making us know that you're out there listening and watching and supporting our work that we're doing. And I'm not sure what to do next. Staff, do you have anything else?
Well, it appears that, so are there any other committee comments for discussion? Sue,
Right.
do you have one?
No, I was just going to say, do we need to make a formal motion to accept the recommendations?
Yeah, so that's the next action item.
Okay,
So if there are no other further comments or responses to the comments that were provided during the public hearing, then Chair, would you lead us into action?
So if there are no more comments, we will, I need a motion for funding for accepting as listed the staff funding recommendations.
I move that the committee accept the staff recommendations as drafted on the documents that we reviewed.
I second it.
Does anybody, are there any nays? Look, I'm going to remember nay now forever. If there are no nays, then we can agree that we have accepted the motion. Yay.
Yay, wonderful, great guys. Fantastic. So Chair, may I start in staff updates? Wonderful. Okay, so thank you so much to everyone that has joined us from our agencies tonight. You are welcome to stay with us. I will be providing a brief update for Amplifund. Otherwise, continue to reach out to staff if you have any additional questions on anything moving forward. We also, again, I like to reiterate the fact that we have a public comment period on these funding recommendations that has to occur prior to it going to City Council. So the funding recommendations will be posted online on the city's community development grants web pages. And if you have difficulty accessing that, please reach out to community development staff. So committee and all, we have this wonderful set of hearings and meetings that we have coming up. So I know that tomorrow, since we were able to address everything tonight, we will not hold a committee meeting tomorrow. So I just want everybody to be aware we were able to handle everything tonight. We do not need our tentative meeting set for tomorrow night. So go ahead and have your evening back for Wednesday. We are going to be having our next public hearing for human needs funds, and that is on December 7th. At that time, we will be going into what is now the new grant management software system. So staff has we received a good amount of applications. I think the number was 25 applications that we received through the new online portal for Amplifund. Committee members, by this point, you all should have tested and tried and true your accounts and tested whether or not you're able to get into Amplifund. Please, if you have not yet, do that no later by the end of this week. By Friday, you will be given, you will start to see applications assigned to you in your Amplifund account for scoring. And so at that time, you're going to be doing individual scoring on the applications. Your scores will be anonymous until we all meet for the public hearing. So your scores will be your scores only, and you will have the ability to provide comment on the applications if you choose to do so. Please remember that the comments are open to public record. And of course, you wouldn't say anything that you wouldn't want to say to the applicant anyway. So everybody here understands that. So with that, you will have the holiday period leading up to the 7th to go through and work on applications. I strongly encourage each and every one of you to work on them incrementally, a little bit each day. Do not try and do a hard, procrastination push at the very end on the night of December 6th to try and work through all the applications. It's a new system. In case you do encounter issues, we want to be able to address those early on. If you do, though, please know that Amplifund has a very quick and accessible and very responsive Zendesk group. And so if you start to have system issues, server issues, user issues, please you reach out to Amplifund and then also follow up with staff. So just know that those will come your way Friday. Yes, Sue.
So will we get an email that alerts us that we've got stuff coming in? And I kept thinking it was for this meeting, and I was kind of panicking because it's like, I haven't done my homework. So I'm really relieved to find out that it's for the next round and not this one, because
yes, sorry, that's confusing.
Kind of panicking there.
Trying to do the two funding sources, and one of them through Amplifund and one of them, the method we just used, is confusing, and then sending out the meeting invitations, all of that. So good job keeping track. And now you can just focus on Amplifund, and Human Needs. So will they get an email for each one that we enroll into the committee review? So you might get a lot of emails for each separate application. Is that correct, Kimbra?
Yeah, so what will happen is applications have to go through what's called a workflow queue. And the workflow queue is set up so that first staff is looking at all the applications for completeness. So if there's anybody that has an incomplete application, immediately that's going to be addressed prior to you getting the application. The next thing that staff does is it gets enrolled into an eligibility queue. So now we are looking at, are they serving the eligible criteria? Do they meet the eligible criteria for the application? Are they serving the right benefit group that's desired for the funding source? After that point, if the application is deemed complete and there's no additional follow-up, it gets enrolled into the CAC individual review queue. At the time that is enrolled into the CAC individual workflow queue, that is when you will get your notification that organization ABC is now ready for your review. And that is going to be a system notification from Amplifund. So you will get an email from Amplifund that says organization ABC is ready for your review. And it's only going to be your review. You're not going to be able to, Susan's not going to be able to see Demba's work. Demba is not going to be able to see Ben's work, and vice versa. So when you get that notification, it's going to you directly, and then at the same time, everybody's getting that. So when one organization gets enrolled into the queue, everyone gets a notice for it, and then you all individually go into the system and do your own work. And then after that, it will then get put into the next workflow queue, and that's the holding queue for our public hearing. And so after, Greg, all these fun partners that you have behind you, I just saw a little kitty run behind you real quick. After it gets put into the holding queue, that's where the application, what we're going to do is we have worked with Amplifund to extrapolate all the information into a report, similar to what we're doing right now with our funding recommendations. So it's going to look similar to the Excel document that we use. And then we're going to see their the agency, the program, their ask, their weighted score between everybody. So the average weighted score for all committee members. And then, the funding consideration is something that we will then work on in the hearing. Excuse me. Yes, Sue.
Okay, so I've done lots of rubric scoring in the past, and sort of a rationale. For instance, when I taught grad school, there was a presumption that grades were B or better. So it was always kind of they had to be pretty terrible for you to give them a C if they were in grad school. Whereas, undergrads, that was a whole different ballgame. And so are we starting with the presumption that these are good and meet the needs, and then working our way down? Because, we're hoping that most of them will be in, I forget if 5 is the top score, that you would be giving most people a 5 and they would only get a lower score if they were in deficit. Do you see?
No, yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. So,
or are we starting like at 3.5? What's the range of what would be it's been a while since we did that training, but I mean, is our rationale that we're expecting them to what's normal? Normal score.
Good question. So what you will see in your reviewer instructions, every time you go into score, you have one form. So the agencies, let me back up a little bit and just explain the process. The agency is going to provide a lot of information. They have their narrative form that they filled out. They have an attachment form that they had to fill out, and then they have all their attachments. So Greg, if you wanted to see photos, you're getting photos and financials and bylaws and everything else that we've ever asked for the committee, for the agency. Right. And that's wonderful. And so that's now going to be available for everybody to be able to look through. When you get into the narrative form, that is the only form that is scored. And the reason why that one is scored is because we don't need to score attachments. We don't need to do any weights for that one. There's 3 categories for scoring: community engagement, organizational capacity, and meeting community need. And so with those 3 categories, you are going to be, every time that you score a question, it's already assigned to one of those categories. And so then we will see in those categories what the weighted average is. Now, that being said, the scale that you're working on is a 1 to 5 scale. Staff is not scoring. We do not score any of the applications. We are just checking for completeness and eligibility. The CAC committee members are the ones that are scoring. On a 1 to 5 scale, a 3 is a sufficient answer. There's nothing remarkable about the proposal. There's nothing remarkable about, and when I say remarkable, I'm saying, you know, it's a good, solid answer. Anything from 4 to 5 is going to be, man, not only have these people really put thought and intent into their narrative, into their response, but they are obviously also going above and beyond to address whatever the need is, right? Whatever the program is, whatever, and anything below 3 is going to be, you know what, this really didn't provide enough information for me to be able to look at this and understand what the proposal was, to understand how they're addressing the need. I actually have some concerns maybe about the service model for it. And so you start to kind of look at some different components. If any part of the answer is inadequate or insufficient, then you're going to do a 1 to 2. And at that time, you also have the ability to provide comment of reasons why you did a 1 to 2 scale or reasons why you did a 4 or 5 scale. If there are any comments that need additional follow-up for discussion, you're going to hold on to those, and we're going to bring them up in the public hearing so that it's a combined discussion between all committee members, and it can be addressed at the public hearing for everyone to be, for public disclosure purposes is what that's for. So.
Okay, so then just for the benefit of, if you haven't done a lot of this in the past, then so with the way that I was approaching it, you sort of start with 3-ness and then work your way up and down. But a 3 score would be meets all criteria. So that's helpful. I mean, I know the rubrics will say that, but just if you scored everybody 3s, that would be just perfectly fine. You know, 3 isn't considered a bad score. So
yeah,
I think
so that's really helpful that grant management software frequently asked questions.
Yeah. And Kembra, this is where I can't scroll down. Remember how I told you I can't scroll down? I don't understand what happened, but so
it's odd.
Yeah, I don't understand why. But anyway, you can at least see, so this is what like the applicants, when they went into the FAQs, could see the scale. And then I can't remember if we mentioned the 3 categories below that. Kemba, are you able to get, maybe if I sign in? Oh, wait, there it goes.
Yay.
Okay.
Yeah, they are the 3 categories right there.
Yeah. So if you go to the City of Everett website and just search for like software FAQs or something, this should pull up a little more information as well. And I can copy and paste this into an email that I'll be sending you tomorrow or the next day with more information.
Well, I do want, so I think that, you know, this is important because this is what the applicants were told when they were applying, but the, when you go into Amplifund and when you are in the narrative form and scoring, you will see reviewer instructions that are visible only to the reviewer. And in those instructions, it will break down, you know, the clarification of the scoring criteria and what we're doing there. So just when you go into the system, every single application will have reviewer instructions that breaks this all down. And it's just a pre-populated kind of field that's now available for you to use. I do want to add real quick. So because this is something that this is the first time that we've started to introduce scoring. This is the first time that we're automating this entire process. This is obviously a period of learning and growth for all of us. And that being said, it was important to try and make the scoring scale at least something that was not punitive to agencies for this first round, something that could be easily carried forth by all committee members, and something that was going to be fairly kind of simple and equitable. in its initial practice for it. If we start to go through this and later on, after we do the hearing on the 7th, if the committee would like to, and I would love to hear it, meet so that we can collect feedback and start to structure how this can move forward, I would love to have that opportunity with the committee. And so if I'm seeing that I have 1, 2, 3 nods so far, if that's something that everybody wants, then we can schedule a post December 7th meeting and start to really dive in on how we want this to be something moving forward. This is a very dynamic year for the grant management software, so it was something that, you know, this is a good starting point and something we can grow for moving forward. So Susan?
Yeah, so I guess my cautionary stuff about the grading or the scoring was that it felt really incredibly subjective. And that was my concern. I couldn't find the word earlier, but it popped into my head while we've been talking about it. And so I want to, personally, I'm going to be very cautious about my filters, my, you know, my personal agenda. Is that's something that's just a caution for me. And I just want to say that out loud. It's not easy, right? And we're all negotiating this together, and so are the agencies. And so, you know, unless something is just horrible, which I don't think you're gonna get through your vetting process, you know, we should just have open minds and be really cautious.
And that's exactly true. That's very true. And that's something that everybody should be doing anyway in your practices for funding recommendations, is to not bring your own personal biases into our discussions. Understanding that, of course, what we're doing here is you're trying to be as equitable and fair in your practice overall. Actually, and I think that introducing scoring is something that actually will help us to move towards that, but we do need to be very mindful about, you know, when we're doing scoring, are we making sure that we're looking at diverse organizations that are doing, first of all, you know, somebody may be doing food and they may prioritize a certain community in need, and somebody else is doing housing security. We don't, you know, how are we balancing all that, right? So we have to have some kind of scale that's able to be applied for a very diverse group of projects and applications that you're going to be looking at. But again, as we move through this, I strongly encourage all of you to start kind of keeping that equitable lens in mind when we're doing the scoring, when we're moving through this for the first time. And when we meet again as a committee following, let's bring that to the table. Let's bring those process improvements, some kind of best, you know, if you had an issue with something, if you thought something was great, let's talk about that and let's start to improve on this, because this is something that the reason why we're doing it this year for human needs is because that's a little bit more forgiving. Next year, we're going to be doing this for Cdbg, home, and AHTF. So we need to be very mindful and know what it is that we're doing by that point. And so this year is a growing year for that. Any other comments? Go ahead, Sue.
I was just going to say, when you score multiple things over multiple days and times, it's an evolving process, but it's good for us to try and be as consistent as possible, because, you know, however you tended to be at the beginning of the process, you want to kind of be the same way at the end, or you know, your scores will be skewed. So let's just say hypothetically that I tended to grade a little bit hard and someone else tended to grade a little soft. As long as you're consistent through the process, it won't skew the results. But if you start out, you're really hard on the agencies, and then by the end you're not, then your reliability through the process will skew it. So, I mean, we all want to be as impartial and fair as we can, but try not to change your too much over the process of it, because it'll skew, you know. I mean, I'm going to work on the presumption that they're adequate until I'm proven otherwise, and go up or down from there. That's why I said the little start with the 3 and move up or down. But just however you are, try and be consistent, because when you grade a whole bunch of things over time, you know, it can vary. You can fluctuate more than you realize, just based on you're tired that day or whatever. I always used to try and drew a stack of papers from one class all at the same time, so that they all got the same bias of that day. But we can't do that with these. But I mean, it's probably not as complicated as we're making it sound. But but just be consistent to yourself. And then as we evolve and grow, we might have to change it. But, you know, that's just my advice.
That's very good comments. Very good input. Thank you, Sue.
Greg has his hand up, yeah.
Yeah, I think we talk about these outfits and we give money to these people and we know the people, they speak to us, but we don't go physically to these places and give them a look over. We don't go to Child Strive and see what's going on there. We don't go to the YMCA to see what their child care center is. I have done this a few times, not as many, but I kind of think that should be one of the requirements to be appointed to this committee, is to see what's out there, because we are so isolated from the reality of what's really going on with these outfits that it's becoming to me to be a little weird.
I think that's fantastic input, Greg. I think that's really good. We have new committee members that we're going to be recruiting for this next year, and this may be something that we need to discuss. Do we need to do
just as an example? I'm sorry to walk over you.
No, it's a fantastic.
But I was curious about 5 years ago. I was curious about the YMCA daycare thing, so I went over there. I announced, made an appointment, and I went over there, and I was blown away. It was a full-blown school. I mean, it had classroom. Yeah, you're shaking your head, Kathy. But it was absolutely mind-blowing. I was so impressed. And all this time, I'd have thought, yeah, they got a room with a carpet and somebody, so let's dance together and let's. Nuh-uh. It was a school. They taught subjects there. It was really impressive. So I kind of like to go to some of these places and see what they're about. And I think we all should. We could judge much better that way too.
No, it's a good comment for, yeah.
Because some of these places are a little bit administratively top heavy, if you know what I'm talking about. And if all I got to do is look at the figures, and you can see that most of their money goes to the employees and very little goes where it should be going. So anyway, that's all.
Samantha, you had a good comment for consideration. Yeah, Samantha.
Hey, so I was thinking, social media presence is definitely going to be a really good way to investigate. I don't know about just jumping right in there and saying like, show me what you got, and I'm so-and-so from so forth. But I mean, good for you, Greg, because I know who to hire if I need to figure something out. But I would like to say that a social media presence is also a good investigation tool for any applications or for the applicants that do come across for us. We should definitely investigate what's their Facebook looking like, what's their Instagram looking like. Is there a time or a place for us to, go look and investigate? I wholeheartedly agree with you, Greg. But there's also a subtler approach also.
Well, plus it makes us look like we're a force to be reckoned with.
Right, but you also open yourself up to, someone putting on a show for you because, you're grading their
as long as they
application. And you don't want people to put on a front. You want to see them, what they really stand for.
Yeah, I hear you. But,
Good idea.
I'm not beefing with you, Greg. I love you to pieces. I agree with your concept. I'm just also saying, also, we could do this.
Cool. I like the idea.
Vicki.
I just wanted to make something to give you some light at the end of the tunnel with the human needs applications on AmpliFund. We did put character limits, so you might notice some of their answers are a bit brief. And it's because they had 500 characters, not just 500 words. So they really, sometimes you might go, gosh, that didn't really answer it, but we did put character limits, and that's something else that we can evaluate after we go through this. But in some ways it's good because they can't give really long answers on some of them. So that should help in the review process. Yeah, if you think this doesn't fully answer it, they had limited characters.
The frustrated English teacher that I am inside, that if things all of a sudden it stops. It's like, what? So yeah, that's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, so let's say that their answer is stopped at 500 characters, but let's just say like the really good part was at 501 characters. Is there gonna be a way for us to dig deeper with them specifically, if that were ever to be a scenario?
So it won't. So the good thing is that this system is like anything else, where if you didn't get what you needed to in the 500 characters, then we are first seeing if there's any incomplete answer. So all the answers that you should get should be complete answers. So hopefully they were able to get their punch of a need or an ask or proposal in that shortened time. And that was something that the software contractor actually suggested that we do, because you're going to go through so much when you open this up, that if you're going to be looking at pages or paragraphs of information, you guys may peter out after the first 5 applications. And so some of this is also trying to maintain your attention a little bit. But that's a very good point though, Samantha, that if we end up seeing that it's like, you know what, 500 characters really just did not do it for proposal of addressing need. I would really like to see something that's a little bit beefier in the future for these answers. Then that allows for staff to immediately go in and go, okay, well then we need to up this to 750 to 1,000 characters. We really need to go back and dive into that. If you are running into any of that though for these applications, make note of it in the comments with your review, and we will bring it up during questions, just like we did during this public hearing for next month's public hearing. So definitely just kind of keep that there and say, I would really like further information on this component, and we'll address it during committee discussion at the next public hearing.
And refresh us about how many applications are we looking to be reviewing?
25.
Oh, okay, so good to know.
Demba,
Yes.
you had your hand up a little while ago. Do you have a question, comment?
Yes, I have a comment. I don't know if this is an appropriate venue to comment this also. It's more or less like a feedback, because I mean, this is my second time on this committee, right? You know, I have watched these same agencies, you know, coming back over and over again, depending on public funds. So I wonder if, you know, I mean, if as part of the application process, right, of the application forms, you can put in innovation. I mean, what company would come up with some kind of a creativity to get out of public funding, right? I mean, they create some kind of an agency where they can now get their own funding. Because if there's no public funds, then what's going to happen to these people?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, every year we allocate the same funds and the same people keep coming back. I mean, to me, there doesn't seem to be any improvement. It's just depending on the public over and over again. So some of these companies will be able to be creative enough to really get out of public funding, or to need as little support as possible. I mean, is that, I don't know who designed the forms or where that this can be, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking out of the box. I'm saying, hey, if I'm depending on this every year, what if I didn't get this money? What's going to happen to me? Or to the people that I help?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic comment, Demba. With that, I will say that one of the things that Vicky brought up earlier in the discussion tonight is something that we are going to start moving towards, and something that I would like for the committee to continue to keep in the back of your mind. Cdbg funds for public services truly should be focused on either expansion of service or new services. And so when we're looking at the fact that we have repeat applicants for public service dollars under the Cdbg program, we really need to start taking a more critical eye and saying, how are they either meeting the criteria of the funding source that either sees this as a new service, and we did have a new service on one of the funding recommendations that you all made tonight, or how are they doing expansion of service beyond what they've done before? One of the things that we included in this year's 2022 human needs application was, did you have any successes or any challenges for your organization over this last year? And those that ended up, and since you received, I think it was actually, I made this a conditional question on, did you receive human needs funds in the past? And if they had received human needs funds in the past, then 2 other questions came up. Did you have any challenges or any successes based on this, you know, your past utilization of these funds? with that, you'll see then, and those are not scored. So that's something that if somebody did not receive funding in the past, it's not punitive if they did not get that answer for them. So you're not going to be, that's not something that's going to skew scores at all. We were trying to be very mindful about that. But you will see then, if somebody did receive funding in the past for human needs for the program that they're asking for, what did they do to improve that this time? What have they done to really kind of start to work on that? Or how did they address any challenges? Or how did they make the program better? That is something that we can start to work on and start to improve with the applications. And especially something though that with the federal dollars, we have got to be a little bit, we've got to really hone in on that. And that is not only the committee's review of the funding recommendation, but that's also staff and how we start to work with our agencies and understanding that we're going to be looking at greater grant awards and for services that are improved or new as far as Cdbg funding goes. And with human needs, it is actually really nice that this year with human needs, there are a few agencies that I've never actually even heard of some of the agencies that have applied for human needs funds, not to mention also there are ones that if I have heard of them, they have not received human needs funds before. Now that's not all of them. We do have people that continue to come back, but there are some that continue to get, you know, be aware of this funding source. And that's another thing that as you are going out into the community, as you interact with organizations and agencies, you guys are our best champions to allow for agencies to understand how to utilize these funding sources. You guys are our best advocates and champions for bringing community need back to this group. And so next year, if we're looking at the fact that we don't want to split mental health between two priorities of basic services and homelessness, let's address that when we do our public hearing for community needs in the end of fall or end of summer, early fall. So these are all really good comments. You guys have had great energy tonight, and I am here for this. This is fantastic. I really love the discussion that you guys are all having, whether it's scoring or whether it's consideration of our proposals. And this kind of feedback, I would encourage you to also just email Vicki and I with any other kind of thoughts that you may have for us to continue to implement moving forward, because we're in a really good time now to capitalize on this momentum because we have new grant management software, because there's been such an influx of CARES funds and other funds out there. We're having to really kind of recognize and meet some agencies on where they're at, because there are agencies that are having fundraising constraints because of COVID, because we're having to look at doing larger grant awards. So awesome work, guys. You guys are doing fantastic. I cannot thank you enough for everybody's input tonight. And I just, I just really, really appreciate everyone being on the committee, and then also everyone showing up tonight. Not only did we have quorum, but we had
everyone.
Attendance. With that, also, just real quick, a pitch that. So one of the other staff updates, we have 4 open positions that are going to be on this committee for next year. Please do everything you can to encourage anybody that you know, anybody that might be interested, anybody that's at a organization that you work with, or even the clients of the organizations that you work with. Part of the responsibility that we have on this committee is to make sure that we have persons that represent the communities we are serving. So please get out the word that we need to have people apply for this committee, and we have 4 open positions. We're going to be doing interviews in the next month or 2, and then there will be appointments probably in the early of next year. So continue to get the word out on that. The application is on the website. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Kembra, do they need to live in the city limits of Everett, or can they work in the city but live in a different city?
That's a great question. I've not been given any direction that somebody that does not live in the city cannot apply, but I think they do need to have some live work kind of investment in the city otherwise. So if you don't live in the city, you may need to work in the city. But
okay.
I did not receive the application, so I am not sure what the criteria would be if they didn't meet either one of those. So I can follow up on that if anybody wants me to get a clearer answer on that later. Okay, any other, does anybody have any questions on staff right now? Again, Ben did a fantastic pitch for the ARP funds earlier. If you are not aware about that, City Council is going to be looking and considering that topic at their meeting tomorrow night. So that is about $20 million that the city is receiving through American Rescue Plan Act funds. And some of those dollars are centered and catered towards specifically homelessness. So we see that any agency that did not meet some need tonight may be a good fit for some of the ARP funds. We know that there's also some economic development portion that's coming out of ARP funds for the Everett Forward grant, and that's being led by a different division. But anybody that also may be working on employment or job training should also consider looking at the Everett Forward grants. So any questions on anything else for city efforts or comments from the committee? Otherwise, I will give it back to you. It's that time.
Who wants to say we're adjourning? I need a motion and a second, please.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
I second that.
Thank you. If I don't hear any nays, I'm going to say our meeting is lovingly adjourned.
Lovingly. Yay.